say when a baby is born, so is a mother. But while you are there to help your baby grow into the person he or she is meant to be, who is there to help you? Many women feel lost and alone when they become mothers, wondering, who am I now? Sometimes it feels like the transformation from woman to mother is as radical as a caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly. Did you know that inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar literally turns into goop before it rearranges itself into a butterfly? This podcast is about the goop, what soul transformation looks like as you transition from being a woman to a mom, and all the transformations that continue to inform our motherhood experience. Your child's growth matters, but yours does too. I'm your host, Brittany Ming. Welcome to the Motherhood Metamorphosis. Welcome everyone to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. I'm your host, Brittany Ming, and today we're talking to Suzzie Vehrs. Suzzie is a mother, doula, and childbirth educator, and the founder of She Births Bravely, an organization that provides comprehensive education and support for expecting parents. She has worked with hundreds of families on their journey towards childbirth and parenting. Suzzie is passionate about empowering parents to make informed decisions about their birthing and parenting experiences. So welcome, Suzzie. I'm so happy to have you on today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Tell me about your kids. How many children do you have?
I have two kids. They are 6 and 10, and they started school this week. And both their teachers have been teaching their grades for over 20 years. So I am just so stoked that they are in classrooms that have so much stability and fun and creativity.
I think that having when you hear the teachers had 20 years, you're like, okay, you are experienced, you know what you're doing, and you just hope that that's just like the deep breath you need to go into the school year with okay, confidence.
Yeah. Well, and they still have smiles on their faces, which I think is like the biggest flex because I think, there's a phrase that oh, everybody hates their job at some point. That's why you get paid. But to have a job that you have passion for and to save and protect that passion after years of doing something is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I love hearing that. So you are a doula, and I was so excited when I heard about you, and your podcast scheduler contacted me and told me all about you because I'm a mother of 5, and I've had 3 doulas for my birth. So I love the doula experience, and I'm just excited to hear about your story. And could you tell us what led you to become a doula?
Yeah. I am very much not, when I was younger, I was not very holistic minded at all. Like, I didn't pay attention to my diet. I didn't pay attention to how I cared for myself. I basically ran on empty and pushed myself to, achieve as much as I could. And when I think about college, I would eat donuts for breakfast, worked really hard, somehow made everything work. But as I entered motherhood, things changed where I found out that even though that had been possible before, it was no longer possible for me to live the way I was before. And so I think for me becoming a doula, first I had a pregnancy loss, which was very complicated and very medical and very extended. It took me about a year of medical complications before I had that. And then I had my daughter, Zoe, who's 10 now. And I had started to realize okay, I need to adjust. I need to open. I need to understand I still believe in modern medicine, but that there's all these other layers beneath that contribute to health. And when I had Zoe, she was an emergency C-section, very typical in the felt like my voice wasn't heard, felt like my questions weren't answered. Didn't know if still to this day, even after being part of hundreds of births, when I look at my own experience, I'm like, was that an emergency or was that a provider caused emergency? I really do not know. It was terrible. I had so much postpartum depression, was very stressed. But then after I had Zoe, I joined a mom's group where I met a friend who was a midwifery student, and we'd go hiking every week. And she kind of showed me the holistic approach to life and birth, in ways that I had kind of been trying to establish healthier habits for me and take care of myself better. She helped me learn how to do those things and let go of the guilt, let go of the shame, process my emotions and ask for help and receive help. And that was just in our friendship. So when I had Hazel, I had actually moved again. But I did hire a midwife and I hired a doula, and I just had the most empowering experience. Partly because everything went my way, which is great. Like, it's easier to say after you have the vaginal birth that you prepare for, like, yeah, of course, everything I did paid off, which doesn't always happen for everybody. But I truly think that they helped me heal enough that even if I had had to go through another cesarean, even if life had thrown obstacles in my course and I had to change course or go plan B or C, I would have been okay emotionally and wouldn't have gone through that same like postpartum depression and just the overall difficulty level of the experience. It just changed from something that was like natural, normal, positive, exciting, happy, joyful, connecting from what birth had been before, which was fearful. So when Hazel was about a year old, I asked my midwife who she suggested for certifications for doula practice, and I have been doing it for about 5 years. I just celebrated the 5th anniversary of the first birth I attended, and it has been
Congratulations.
such a journey. Birth is very challenging and it can be very beautiful. It can also be very hard. And so it's very special to get to be with people through those and try to offer love, encouragement, support, and help people have their voices heard and have choice in the process.
So I love hearing specific stories. So do you have a favorite moment from a birth that you've attended that you could share with us?
Oh my God, so many of my births, all my births are my favorite births. But last week, I actually was with a mom who almost had her baby in the car. We had been to the hospital. We ultimately went to the hospital 3 times.
Oh my gosh.
First time, she had been just having super light contractions, and she wasn't sure if her water broke or not. So we went to go find out. And turns out her water had not broken. So we went back home. The second time, she had kind of come into active labor, but not when we got to the hospital, things slowed down. And they were like, you can check in and get induced, or you can go home and we'll give you morphine and you can sleep. And she chose to go home, have morphine, which was fine. She got like 6 hours of sleep, which is amazing. If anyone's that had those, like, has had a long labor and you've missed like an entire night of sleep, you're like, wow, that 6 hour sleep is amazing. And then she woke up and her contractions picked up really quickly. And like things changed so fast. Like her contractions were like 10 minutes apart. But I was like, okay, these are starting to sound differently. So we started like gathering the bags, and I had her husband, I was like, call the hospital, tell them we're on our way, let them know we're coming in. By the time he was on the phone, they were like 5 minutes apart. By the time we were getting in the car, she was like, feeling that pressure and urge to push. So we get in the car and go, they go in their car, I go in my car, and I'm like, I get on the phone and I'm like, hey, I know we called you 10 minutes ago, but you're going to have to meet us by the door, and please send the midwife out because I don't know if we're going to make it into the hospital to have this baby. And they're like, just reroute and go to another hospital. And I was like, no, 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 we can't do that. Like, I don't think they'll pick up the phone if I call them. Like, you meet us, door, wheelchair, midwife, please. And they were like, we don't usually do that. And I was like, I know you don't usually do
Make
that.
an exception.
This is the time. And they like pulled it off beautifully. We got there. They met us at the door. They got us, the birth center's on the 5th floor. So you kind of have to like zoom through the hospital. Usually it's a slow little walk where you stop every minute or so for contractions, but this was just like, boom. And then she had her baby like pretty much right when we got there. It was, it was very quick when it got to that part. So I don't know. It's favorite story, a fun one for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I had and especially after such a long labor to have it be like so exciting at the end and fast.
Yeah.
My first pregnancy was twins and I had a planned C-section. So then for my next labor or my next child was 5 years later, and I really wanted to have a VBAC. It was like paramount that I have this VBAC.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to have a doula and have all the things help me. But my labor was so long, it was 60 hours.
Oh my
And so we
God.
went to the hospital twice too. And then it was just so long. But by the end, it was not fast. It was still very, very slow. So, but
Yeah, some
yeah, so
labors.
every birth is different. And all my births have been different. And I've had a different doula for each of
Oh,
my subsequent
aw.
births. So that's been a unique experience too. So were you able to have a doula with your second? So you have two daughters?
I have two, yes.
Okay, so Hazel is your second daughter.
Yes.
So were you able to have a doula with her?
I was, yeah, my doula was Tiffany, and she was very, I mean, she was just so amazing. When I think back to all the emotions she helped me process, and I remember sitting on her couch being so scared in her office, and I was just crying about how scared I was to go through the birth process again, and how much I had been through, and she just held so much space for me, and to process the emotions, have the emotions, let them be, and move past them. And I remember by the time I was in labor, I was like so relaxed about it. It was like actually it was a quite fun day. Throughout the process. I mean, yes, at some points I was like, okay, this is really hard. It hurts. But overall, mostly it was just like just so exciting to be finally meeting my baby. That was the emotion that where fear had been the primary emotion before, it was that love and connection and joy that was the primary emotion the second time. And Tiffany and I had such a good relationship, my doula, that she could just look at me and smile. And that was enough encouragement a lot of times for to quell like the anxiety that was coming up. Like I'd have a contraction that was like really big. And I was like, remember feeling like, is this how it's supposed to feel? And I remember just looking at her about to say something, and she just smiled at me and like gave me a thumbs up at one point. And I remember like, oh, if she's not scared, I don't have to be scared. Let's do
Mhm.
this.
So I'm just curious because you had the doula birth and then that was for your second birth. So with
Yeah.
all the women that you have supported as a doula, do you find that you have a lot of second time moms coming in like you, like the previous birth experience wasn't good, so they're wanting a different outcome? Or like who are the moms that come to get a doula?
Yeah, I'd say at least 60 or 70% of my moms are first time moms.
Okay.
A lot of them are families that have something unique about their birth that they want support on. Whether that's like, hey, this just really scares me, or my friend had a really bad experience and I'm scared. Like, I feel like a lot of people, when they come, same with me, I felt the same way when I came to Tiffany. I was like, I'm scared, right? And I feel like a lot of my clients have some version of that. Um, but I have clients that want all kinds of different births. I have had moms that have said to me, look, I'm a high risk person and I don't know how to navigate this. I need somebody I know by my side. And I have other mothers that are like, hey, like I'm trying to opt out of as many medical things and go as natural as possible. I need somebody to help me with that. And people who just don't know. I do work with, I think because I am a VBAC mom, I get a lot of VBAC mothers, which is great. And then I do work with some second time moms that are just like, had a great birth, had a great doula, for whatever reason, searching for another doula. Happy to work with you. So it's a pretty wide range. And I'd say it's more about people who want to feel heard, seen, and supported and have a continuous person before, during, and after versus wanting a specific birth plan. I mean, most moms want a specific birth plan, but there's not like a specific like type of person, birth plan to get a doula. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
that was really a confusing way to say that.
No, I think that's really good though, because sometimes you think, okay, doula is just like the crunchy mom or like the mom who wants to go all natural, but like people can have doulas for all different types of birth and for all different types of reasons. And even if you had a birth that maybe your husband or your mom or your best friend supported you, maybe for your next birth, you're like, I want a different experience. I want to have a doula.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you said that because there are studies that show that when a couple has a doula, their relationship grows and they're less likely to have, I mean, everybody has learning curves as they're inviting babies. I don't want to say like, oh, doulas get rid of, but couples report more satisfaction with each other when there's a doula there. And there's also studies, part of that is that when there's a doula there, a doula sets up a dad to be a support person as well. Whereas a lot of dads don't know, like you go to a birth class and you theoretically learn all these skills, but when you're in the birth, you're like, I don't know when I'm supposed to be close and when I'm supposed to give space, and they get overwhelmed by all of those different, it's hard to recognize and know exactly what you need if you haven't been through labor many times. And so they try really hard, but then they shut down. So if you've had a spouse that like, you're like, they weren't there for me in the birth, there's a good chance they really wanted to. And they were just like, I have no idea what I'm going to do, so I'm going to stay out of the way. They're usually like, I'm always busy, but I also know how to put the dad where he needs, or partner. It's not always a dad. Sometimes it's a mother, sometimes a mother, grandmother. Sometimes it's, families look all different ways now. But whoever the partner is in the right place when they need it, and how to pull them back and give them a different job when a mom's like, I need space. Stop breathing on.
Yes, I love that you said that because with my husband, we had the C-section birth and he was very nervous about attending the C-section. In fact, we were really uncoupled when we had twins. And we had a lot of arguments about him actually being in the room. He has had he didn't want to be in the room. And I was like, you have to be in there. Like, I'm really scared. And he has had incidents where he's fainted at the sight of blood. So he was worried that he was going to pass out. But also, I think he was really struggling with just becoming a dad. And that was like a mental block for him. And but eventually he did come in. I had a different support person. We had our pastor's wife was actually a OBGYN nurse. And so it was like she worked at the hospital and it was her day off, the day that I was scheduled to go in. And she's like, I'll just come in and be your support person. So she was there for me and fulfilled that emotional role. And actually she ended up be doing more medical stuff because the birth was a little complicated and she just like handed the camera over because she was taking pictures and like went to help with the babies. And so it was just really nice to have her there. But I think that for couples who maybe their partner is reluctant, they don't know what to do, they are weirded out by birth, they love you and they want to like help you, but like having a baby is such a like life-changing experience and you're like, I need my partner to be on board. I think that doula coming in can take some of the pressure off the partner
Yeah.
and just let the partner be like, okay, somebody is experienced and it doesn't have to be all on me.
Mm-hmm.
And they can help support the partner too and help support the birthing person. And it's not as much pressure on either of you to be like, you have to be my everything. There's more support
Right.
all around, and there's not so much weight and pressure on the partner or on the mother to be like, you have to do everything for me.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, even after I went through my doula training, I'd say the first 2 years as a doula, pretty much every birth, I felt like I was learning something new. Like whether it was something about a baby's heart rate or, being able to see anxiety on a parent's face, but then what do you do when like how do you help a person with that? When do you call for a doctor for help versus when do you, because I think a lot of people are surprised. A lot of people initially think of a doula as someone almost as like a gatekeeper that can protect a family from too much intervention. And sometimes it's truly the opposite, where it's like, I see something that should be getting attention and it's not. And so I'm like, okay, like one of my most common phrases that I ask, especially with my high risk moms, is like, can we have a doctor by the bedside? And I think a lot of people don't realize that the way that hospitals are set up, oftentimes doctors are working 24-hour shifts, and there might be two doctors on a floor at the same time, which means one of them is sleeping and one of them is seeing clients. And they kind of need to do that because after 24 hours, after 22 hours, they might have to go perform a surgery. So it's important that they're conserving their energy. Or at some hospitals, the doctors are not even at the hospital, they're on call. And so for them to get there in an emergency, they have to be woken up in the middle of the night. And as someone that also works on call that has to be woken up in the middle of the night, I know that like in my ideal, I'm like, yes, I'm going to be out the door in 10 minutes if I'm needed. And in reality, I'm like, 10 slow minutes, you know, like
You're
it
like,
doesn't.
I'm moving underwater.
So when you look at cases when things have gone dramatically wrong, it's often because there was supposed to be more presence from the medical team and they weren't there. And that's something that as a doula, sometimes I will be the one that notices that and says, and the nurse, and sometimes the nurse is even trying to get that attention and she's like, I'm sorry, they're sleeping. And it's me that's like, nope, they said they wanted a doctor at the bedside. And I get to take on the role of like, the annoying one because it doesn't affect my career because I don't work with the doctor every day. So I can be like, no, you have to get up. Whereas
Yeah.
a nurse is navigating more in her career potentially and might not feel the same, whether they should or should not. You know, like it's really ridiculous that that's all those other things that affect the care you get. But it's
Mhm.
true, the care we get isn't in a bubble. Um, and sometimes you get people who are really like strong advocates for their patients. And sometimes you get somebody who's like dealing with a million other emergencies and has kind of forgotten that you're in there. And
Mhm.
that's not like because they're not a good provider, it's because there's too much on their plate or because they
Mhm.
have a lot of things to juggle that systematically we should be supporting our providers better so that they can support their patients better.
Yeah. So the doula acts as like an advocate too for the
Yeah.
patient, but also in the medical world, you're advocating for, the medical care, but you're also advocating for the emotional care and like the physical care of the mother and the baby and the family unit. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit because we want to talk about like personal metamorphosis too. So I want to know how being a doula has informed your own growth as a woman and as a mom.
Oh my God, so many ways. After I became a doula, actually, part of the reason I became a doula, I worked in finance before I had my first daughter. Um, my degree is in economics. And then after I had Zoe, I stayed home. I come from a culture where that was kind of expected of me, and in a my ex-husband definitely expected like stay at home mom life. You know, you get a lot of privileges when you have a stay at home parent, like the hot dinner on the table at 5, a clean house. I don't know, like those types of things. But unfortunately, we didn't have the financials to make that work. So when I began my career, there was a lot of, it was really difficult because I felt like I had to do all the stay at home mom things. And I also didn't have support in childcare. I really debated going back. I worked in finance before and I thought about going back to that. Especially, I got divorced probably about 6 months into my journey as a doula because it became very clear that as I was trying to work, there was not any support for me to actually show up to work, right? And there was no support in me doing the things that would require me to that are required to build a business. And so anyways, we got divorced and it was COVID. School was at home at the time. My older daughter was in first grade and Hazel was preschool age, but there was no preschool because the schools were closed. And I was also she was doing first grade via Zoom. And so there was this moment of wanting to go back into finance, but realizing like I would be negative because I couldn't afford the cost of replacing myself at the house on top of the rent and the other financial responsibilities. And I had recently done my doula certification and I had a passion for it. And I truly, like when I studied economics, I loved the economics of public health because I love the stories that numbers tell. And it's true, when we know more, we can do more and we can make better choices. And when it comes to labor and birth, there's a lot of gatekeeping around information that prevents mothers from being able to make informed decisions about their own lives. And I feel like I felt that very personally, where if I had more information, I might have made different choices in Zoe's birth, but I wasn't given that information. I didn't have access to it. As a doula, there was a sense of like, because you condense your hours into these very short periods, there was something about that that seemed a little bit more feasible to manage like the workload. And I say this because I know a lot of parents going through divorce, especially if you've been a stay-at-home mom, there's questions about like, I remember feeling I didn't take alimony. um, I don't believe the child support was calculated correctly. And I never spoke up about it because I felt that I had the responsibility to provide fully for my family, not realizing that in doing 80% of the child care, but also being expected to make 100% of a Seattle income, which is, I mean, it's a pretty high cost of living area. Or I'd say 80% of an income. I had a small amount of child support, but not even enough to cover rent and groceries. I think there was this whole realization of the time and effort it actually takes to mother, and recognizing those things not as a privilege you're given, which it is a privilege, but also it takes work, recognizing like the the unpaid labor of motherhood, and also recognizing like how amazing it is to be able to get to do both, and but also like it's okay and right that we have rules and systems to set up and protect that role of motherhood so that you're not left in poverty or doing it all on earning the income and doing the child care while someone else is hiking and pretending to be a parent. I don't know, like I feel like maybe this wasn't what you were asking, but I
Do
feel
you
like
think
it's
that realizing those types of that you deserve that type of support like relays into that birthing parents also deserve that type of support with a doula, like somebody to come alongside them? Like, do you see those parallels in your work and then in your personal life?
I actually do. And I think that, like, as I've done this, been in this career longer, like, I actually do a lot of postpartum support as well, where, like, when my moms come home from the hospital, I come visit them in their home. I cook their meals. I watch their baby. I spend like, I usually do on average about 20 hours of postpartum care, which is 5 4-hour visits over the course of a couple months. So you're getting like continual check-ins and support and help with lactation and help as baby's growing and evolving and some of the workload off, because taking care of a baby is such an enormous task. And I don't think we give moms credit. For example, a mom who's breastfeeding for a year, that takes about 1,800 hours, which is about equivalent to a full-time job with 3 weeks of vacation. It's also equivalent to getting a master's degree, because that's usually about 1,800 hours of work. And when I was the one breastfeeding, I have pride for doing it, but it was like, oh, you're just breastfeeding, you're just watching TV, you're so late. Like there was so many like negative things associated with it, not like, oh, hey, you're accomplishing this great, big, huge, gigantic task that's requiring so much effort and energy. It was just kind of expected that it would slide into my life as if nothing else changed. And so when we talk about metamorphosis, like recognizing and appreciating the work that I did to parent my kids when they were little, but also learning that those structures and support around that are things that like I need to ask for and advocate for, and it is okay and safe and healthy and right for me to do that.
Yeah. Well, even when you said that your economics degree, you loved the economics of public health. The doula is kind of like you are filling the role of public health support, like the support that mothers should have after especially after, I mean, during pregnancy, yes, but after the child is born, that's a public health ideology, is that mothers should be cared for by their community. And even though the doula is like a privately employed public health person, I really wish that in our country, in our society, that was available to all people, because not everybody can afford a doula, a birth doula, or a postpartum doula. But I see like there is such a need for more community support around mothers that should be a right to have that community support.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think that times are shifting. There's, I think, 19 states that reimburse for doulas. I know my state where I'm in Washington, our program goes live in January 2025. will be covered by Medicaid for attending the birth. And I hope that as time goes by, we're able to build systems around getting more postpartum support too, as far as having somebody in your home, either doing the meal prep or showing you how to do the baby things. And lactation support is kind of covered, but there is just something about having somebody present with you that is up to date, knows what they're doing. That's not a family member, because it can be so much, depending on the family dynamics, can be really helpful to have family support, or that can also be another job. Yeah, so I really hope that the way we're moving is towards doula care for all, but we're not there yet. I hope that those
Yeah, I love hearing that because there was no financial reimbursement for any of my doulas. We paid out of pocket. And it was something that my husband was like, whatever you want to feel supported, we will pay for. Because he was like, I want you to have all the support you can because I don't feel adequate to cover this. So I want you to have all the support you can have. And ultimately, during the births, he felt more comfortable and was able to just focus on me without feeling like I have to do all the things. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that was really good for our family. So
Awesome.
not everybody who's listening has had a doula birth. Maybe they're thinking they want one, maybe for a next child, but is there some wisdom that you could share from being a doula that translates to the challenges of womanhood or motherhood?
Yeah, I would say that there's no one right way. I think that as a culture, we have kind of an obsession with this looking for the best. And I think that there's a difference between best and right for me, or best for me. And as a doula, like I know that, like, in general, for example, in general, I know that inductions and epidurals have risk factors that make C-sections slightly more likely. It does increase that risk. So you could say it's best to have a natural birth. But I also know that, like, people have different pain tolerance levels. And there are people where that epidural is the best. And there are people that if you don't do an induction, they're going to be in a life-threatening situation. And so maybe you don't like that you have to do, like, that an induction becomes the best choice for you, but you should be proud of yourself when you make that best choice, even if it's not the choice you initially thought would be best for you.
I like that. That's really good. I think that translates to so much of motherhood because we can second guess ourselves so much. We can think, I want to be this kind of mother who does this, 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 and this, and that means I'm a good mom. But if your child presents different needs or you have different challenges in your life, whether it's with your marriage or your job or your own health issues, you have to figure out what does my best look like in this unique situation, not like the list of perfect things, whether it's like the perfect birth or the perfect motherhood or family situation.
Yeah. And there's so much freedom and joy in finding the best for me, because then we can, like, essentially run our own race and not be comparing ourselves to everybody else so much. And I think Brene Brown has this concept of, like, people in your life that are like blow out the candle, the light on your candle. And I think when we're focused on, like, well, what is the best for me, it allows us to also be present for and support the best of someone else, even if that's radically different, or maybe something that makes us a little jealous, or an opportunity we didn't have, like, there's space there for us to all have light and to light each other up. But if we're trying to force ourselves into boxes that we don't fit in, then we're naturally going to shut off our light, and probably in the process, the light of others around us.
No, I really like that. What advice would you give to a pregnant woman who about seeking a doula for her birth?
Yeah. When you ask a doula questions, um, be honest about your birth plan and make sure that she's comfortable with it. And I say this because there are some doulas that are like, oh no, I won't go into the hospitals. Most doulas are very supportive of, like, this is your plan. I want to help implement whatever you say. But there is, like, every joke has an element of truth. Every, like, that perception of, oh, doulas are for only natural moms. Like, there is a subset of doulas that are like that. So check if you're not, if you're like a specific category, have a conversation and pick somebody that aligns really well with your plan and is not trying to like change your mind, so to speak, unless you're asking them for advice and they're being open and honest about it. Also, make sure that they're going to attend your birth. Doulas are supposed to be continuous support from the moment you're ready for support until a couple hours after your birth. I have been hearing some doulas saying like, oh, I don't go until active labor, or I don't go until this point in time. If you're wanting support in your early labor, just make sure that your doula, that it's in your contract, that that's what, when they join you. And make sure that you have a good vibe. I think reviews are a really great place to see what what people say about a doula. And if you like, I always interview 3 people before I choose anybody. And so when people interview me as a doula, I'm like, I would much like, I want to be your doula, but I would much rather be your doula if you've done your work and you know that I'm the right person for you, because it is like a very sacred and special relationship, that where the trust and the energy in the relationship is very important, as well as just the knowledge and the fact that it is a doula. It matters that you're
Yes.
good.
Yeah. I would say, because I have had 3 doulas and I've interviewed quite a few people. And so that like connection is so important, because if you don't feel it, like, don't go with that person, even if they like maybe check everything on your list. Like, I view it as like, if you don't, I don't know, you got to feel it. That was like my main thing for having the doula. Because I mean, like, they're gonna see you naked. So I mean, you gotta have some trust.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
There,
but yeah, it's really important. And I've had all different, I've had to do my first doula. She had a lot of experience, but she wasn't a mother herself. And that was fine. My next doula was like a grandmother, and she had like 8 children, and she had grandchildren. And I had a very different doula experience. My next doula, like, she had like 2 kids herself and was a little younger than me. But like, so it's been all different people that you end up connecting with that can help you through your birth.
yeah. And I feel like sometimes we need those different things. Like when I look at the people that hire me, sometimes I'm like, we are a lot alike. Like we're the same age, we're the same, we have very similar interests. Like it's like the BFF part of having a doula there. And there are sometimes where someone will say to me, like, oh, I didn't hire you. And I look at who they hired, and I'm like, this is amazing, because you found like you needed a mother figure and you found somebody that can hold that space in this part of your life and have that role that filled, that maybe you don't naturally get filled in your family. Um, which is just a part of life that all our families, so it's great that you can use doulas to kind of like navigate and fill holes in the support, where you're like, I need support here, I can find somebody like this.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think I also just want to add, like, a doula doesn't, well, we've already talked about this, but like, they don't take the place of your partner. They don't
Mhm.
take the place of an epidural. You can still get an epidural and have a doula. And it's okay if you have a doula and you end up having a C-section. Because I've had all 3 of those things for all of my births. So and the doula presence, I was so glad that I had her, for and all of those situations that ended up happening. I was just thankful that I had that support person there.
Yeah. And one thing I see more and more doulas doing for their surgical birth moms, if you have like, if I have a mom who hired me for a labor, but then ended up, with a breech baby, and they're like, oh, like now instead of attempting labor, I went from expecting a long day of labor to a few hours of a surgery. A lot of doulas are now offering to roll those hours into postpartum care, so that when you're coming home from a surgery and you can't move as easily and it's harder to pick up your baby, and that we're taking off more of the load on those days, so that you can be like rested and fed in bed, bonding with your baby, and your meals and household tasks are a little bit alleviated off of your family's workload.
Yeah, that's really important. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experience from your life and your work and your passion. And I'm just really thankful you came on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the work you're doing here. It's so amazing to hear so many different transformations and the growth and change we all go through. So thanks for making a space to share that.
Yeah. So to end our time, I have a question for you. What is saving your life right now?
What is saving my life right now? I am obsessed with bubble tea right now. Like, I don't know why, but if I'm stressed, if I'm forgot a meal, if it doesn't matter, if I'm running from one appointment to another, if I've been at the hospital for 20 hours and I'm like, I need a pick me up, it's a bubble tea.
I love that. It's the little things, right? You like that first sip and you're like, ah, this is
Yeah.
just hitting the spot.
Yeah.
Where can we find you online?
I'm at She Births Bravely is my website, and Instagram is just at She Births Bravely.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our time today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Next, tell your friends. Podcasts are a slow growth type of social media, so promo works best when it's from person to person. If you know another mom who's in the goop right now, send her a text of encouragement and the link to the episode that is speaking to your heart right now. If you have a story about your own matrescence, the physical, emotional, hormonal, and social transition that occurs when someone becomes a mother, please leave a comment below. I want this channel to be a place where women can build community about the challenges and joys of their own motherhood metamorphosis. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope it encouraged you and gave you some good food for thought. If you ever have any questions, comments, or you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can email me at brittanyaming@gmail.com. Welcome everyone to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. Let me start over. I don't know if you've listened to many episodes. I sometimes have a blooper reel at the end that I include like the missteps.
That's the best because it's impossible to get through an episode with no mistakes.
I know. Well, all my kids are in school this year too, but I've been doing this for a couple years, so my daughter's been at home. So I have a lot of episodes where the blooper reel is her coming in to talk to me. So it's funny. Now she's not going to be here to come talk to me, but
Kind
which
of
is a
like
little sad, but
bittersweet.
also like, yay, it's school. So okay, start over.